The third of all words, greenhouse gases come from land use, forest, can the type of operation will be. And of course, changes in forest cover. Nearly half of the agricultural sector's emissions can be traced to engineering implementation and land clearing. Engineering implementation, of course, is your cattle, which are eventually passing on retail, and then land clearing has to do with shopping that with the big not what it is. So what can you do? What we can do. It's trying to tackle engineering implementation. How do we keep these cattle from, well, these ruminants generally, from producing all this methane? And I started mentioning it yesterday. So when more than 80% of the farm operations involves bovine animals, more than 50% of the farm operation involves the breed of bovine animals. I'm just showing out here. Bovine, of course, bovine or bovine, cattle, cows, and so on. The breed will go to very fish. Yeah. That's sure that you know, by the school. I know that I've decreasing percentage for the small ruminants, for the larger ruminants and the ones that are more of a problem. Or the all ruminants, the larger ones by definition, by this other side, you give off more. Okay. And if you have less than 20% of the farm operations involved cattle, less than 50% involved small ruminants, then you get cheaper. If your operations involve no ruminant production, but you utilize organic material, in other words, manual source from ruminants, you will get cheaper. So where that would have been a big thing when we were talking about, remember when we talk about nutrients, and we are getting nutrients from farm animals and blah, blah, blah. Well, here you are penalized, but you don't get extra points for that because that way it's doing anything. If your operations involve no ruminant production or the use of organic materials or manures that are sourced from ruminants, then you get 4. If your operations involve the production of feed additives that reduce enteric emissions, things like use of animal foods and stuff. So this is not a livestock production lecture, but I can assure you that there are regimes and protocols feeding livestock that reduce their not just the entire fermentation, but the end products of that entire fermentation. So in other words, they give off less methane. Okay. But then there, everybody is looking to consume. All right. 5.2. Soil management. So that's the care project. So when we're talking about greenhouse gas reduction, why are we talking about soil use? Soil limit oxides of nitrogen, blah, blah, blah. You can all read it. Like I say, no be under like punch. I don't want to read stuff that they can read themselves. But if I'm going to try at least be able to explain to the farmer why he or she is getting a score, this is what you tell them when you talk about soil use. If the farm involved the broadcasting of inorganic nitrogen fertilizers such as urea, nitrogen, etc., or using a sprinkler irrigation or soil flooding and extensive tillage, then those operations can lead to the production or the emission of greenhouse gas. You're shaking your head, just kidding. You're the second, you're the second, you're not it. Okay. Okay. Absolutely no question with that. Everybody understands the impact of nitrogenous fertilizers on soil and what that will mean for the release of nitrogenous greenhouse gases. Cool. If I knew you're going to be that bright, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to use you from this point. All right. So farm operations involve broadcast use of organic nitrogenous fertilizers. That's sprinkler irrigation. But because it's organic nitrogenous materials, you get that extra point, you get a little line. So at least you're not using strictly inorganic fertilizer. But you're still adding the nitrogen load. That's why you only get 3. You only get 2 points. You get 3 points if your farm operations involve the time release fertilizers and using drip irrigation. Connection now. So we're going from broadcast, inorganic, okay, use of organic, and now we come into the release and other types of fertilizer that won't give you that spike in nitrogen and gas in place. Sorry, it will go down already. Oh,
No, no, just saying that I got a manually takes time to bring the front on right away.
true. So I don't know, you have that constant release of nitrogen. You get 4 months if you time release fertilizers and fertilizers with nitrification inhibitors, and you're still using drip irrigation. As I said, without going into specialized lecture on soil chemistry and soil amelioration, we are saying that we want to be able to recognize, sorry, when farmers are aware of the fact that by dint of their fertilization, they are adding to the emission, right? And they take all reasonable steps. Notice that they haven't said anything stupid like don't use any fertilizer or anything like that. Just saying that given that they will be using fertilizers, doing that, that is going to have an impact on the nitrogen. And if you did these things, we give you extra part, we consider more chemicals. Right, so you get full marks if you use what was given for the 4 points, and you also add drip irrigation and 0 to the soil. But you know, tillage is another means of disturbing the soil and getting some of these gases airborne. Question 19. How many did I say there are? 20? Yeah. So we are 19. That is still out, right? I even thought, yeah, it's saying the difference between going to this one. Sorry. All right. So for question 19, we're looking at how extensive is the use of fossil fuel. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? We're talking about greenhouse gas reduction. So anything you do on your farm that reduces the use of fossil fuels, right, ostensibly change your greenhouse gas emission level. So we are saying that if all your energy needs are met with fossil fuels and manufactured agrochemicals, then you only get 1. Your operations are considered to be fair if all energy needs are met with fossil fuels and no use of manufactured agrochemicals. You consider average, you get 3 points if between 50 to 79% of the energy needs met from renewable sources. And this is where most farmers are falling because the average guy with a solar powered something will also have a gas powered something else. Yeah. You'll hardly find people who are totally off the grid in terms of poor energy needs. Yeah. So you're not being unrealistic, you're just being very practical. So you get 3 points for that. You can get 4 point, if you have more than 80% of your energy needs are met from renewable sources, and then you get 5, which is the highest score we can give you. I think you have 100%. If you have more than 80%, and you have no, and you're not using any manufactured chemicals, then you get a good time. Remember, we were talking about that earlier, where somebody might be using solar panels, but they're using so much chemicals, like, kind of, yeah, the laws to figure out how to allocate those things. And now, here's the resistance. The number, not after 1990. Okay, right, this one. Should I read it? So how are animal manures and unsold produce managed? So tell me about that. Not good. That's good. You ever been to a climate smart agriculture discussion and had somebody ask you about what about unsold produce? What are we doing with unsold produce? What's that going to impact your carbon footprint? Yeah. So you see now when we talk about how we're going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, we get into a very serious field there. So one time, I want to read it for you. You're all able to read this out before we get sure. Sorry. Oh, okay. So if you're involved in livestock production, then these are the kind of questions uh, open range and the manure is produced in situ. In other words, the chocolate very, but they're workable. They get 1.2. If the feed digestibility is improved through chopping and the manure is produced in situ, you get extra points. Anybody wants to have that? I mean, I know anybody wants to have that, I guess, as to why you make a distinction between low quality feed, high in fiber, and more digestible feed when you're talking about greenhouse gas emissions. I know I showed the ones. What it has to do, it has to do with the implementation. That's how the material goes along the guts and that type of thing. That will determine how much of the nitrogen is methane you get being used, which is what we consider about that. Because remember, factory at a bad right, so they are seen as producing all this methane. You get 3 marks, it's considered average. If you have intensive rain system, what does that mean? Feed right? The manure is directed to a centralized facility and incorporated in the field. So in other words, we're not just leaving the manure in situ all over the place. Because we're operating a feedlot, we're able to now curate. We're able to curate the manure and have it in a particular location. You can cure it, you can incorporate it into compost, whatever. Yeah. You get from if you have intensive rearing systems, edible oils are added, and you have biogas production on farm usage. I think this one was inevitable. So that's one coming, right? If you have all this mining, all this digested material, if you put it through a slurry pond into your biogas digester, then that is one way of reducing. It's one way of reducing the greenhouse gas emission, but that doesn't eliminate it altogether. No, because when you're growing methane, what you're putting. But the difference is that methane has so many more times as powerful and greenhouse gas that carbon dioxide. That is better to make that sacrifice. We're going to just start off with a lot of methane and end up with some carbon dioxide than to let all that methane which is a much more potent greenhouse gas to our pollution. Make sense? Make sense? Wow. Very losing your. What about the guy that they can't really call the tax here? Fine. If you have an intensive rainfall, you're still using the edible oil that we talked about, along with additives such as ionophores, which I mentioned briefly. And then, of course, you use the biogas production for on-farm usage. Ladies, gents, you have been extremely kind and to run over those 20 questions.